You're listening to the Connection Care Community Podcast, a podcast designed to help you understand your body more deeply and feel more confident navigating your hormones, cycle, and fertility. Each episode offers grounded, research-informed guidance and integrative tools to support hormone health, embodied awareness, and informed choice. If you're seeking clarity, connection, and a more trusting relationship with your body, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Here's your host, the founder of Connection Care Therapy, Majida.
Hello and welcome to the Connection Care Community Podcast. I'm Majida, and in this episode, we'll be chatting about what a normal post-pill timeline looks like, understanding your body's timeline for recalibration, recovery, and reconnection after hormonal birth control. So, hi there and welcome. We'll start off by talking about coming off hormonal birth control, right? This is a question I get asked a lot, and it's important to say out front, clear as day, it's not just a single event, right? It's not just a one-time, okay, I'm off the pill and then everything is closed doors for many people, right? For many people, it can be a process of reawakening and unfolding to your own rhythm over sometimes weeks and maybe even sometimes over months. So in this, in part 3 of this series that I have, Life After Hormonal Birth Control, it was about preparing the body for the transition. In this part, which is part 4, and I encourage you, I have 3 other parts to this series. So if you're navigating this transition, please make sure to go ahead and check out those other podcasts or head over to my Substack to read those articles. But this is part 4, right, in the Life After Hormonal Birth Control series. And what I want to talk about is what happens next, right? How long it really takes. As I said, it's one of the most common questions that I get. What can I expect to see, and how do I know whether what I'm experiencing is part of the normal recalibration process or if it's part of something that needs deeper attention? Because as I started out with in this podcast, right, the truth is that the post-pill timeline, not just a single event for many, right, and looks different for everyone. It's often about patterns that are shifting, biological patterns, hormonal patterns, and the very seldom talked about emotional patterns. And understanding this can support you in understanding where you're at on the map, right? It can often make a process that can feel a little out of whack, feel a little bit more grounded and a little bit more sane. So we'll start out with talking about what the first 1 to 3 months could look like. And I call this phase the recalibration phase. I'll start out with sharing about a client who sent me her chart, and it was 3 months post-pill. And it came with a message, right, as most of my clients' charts do. The question, right, is this normal? Because this does not look normal. Her cervical fluid was showing up for a day, right, it would disappear for a week and then come back. Her temperatures were erratic, no period, just spotting. And then I opened her chart and I looked at the chart. And while she was saying, is this normal? Because it doesn't seem normal, I did not see a problem, right? What I saw was exactly what you'd expect to see. It was a body figuring out how to communicate after years of synthetic hormones shutting down the conversation. So in the first months after stopping hormonal birth control, your body is beginning to reestablish communication between your brain and your ovaries, what's known as the HPO axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. This system, which regulates ovulation, has been quiet under synthetic hormone influence. What the research shows is that ovulation typically resumes within several weeks to a few months, though for some, the first spontaneous ovulation can take up to 3 months or sometimes longer, right? A large systemic study review that was done over around 14,000 women found that approximately 83% conceived within 12 months of stopping hormonal contraception. So what this tells us is that ovulatory recovery happens within months for most people, though there can be a real variability in what that looks like. So, some common experiences during the recalibration phase, right? And again, just to frame it, we're talking about your first 1 to 3 months. You may experience irregular or delayed first bleeds. Oftentimes, you'll have a withdrawal bleed and not a true period during this time. Cervical fluid changes. Sometimes it's absent at first and then sporadic and then unpredictable. Your, again, system is just waking up its communication channels, and cervical fluid is one of the things that we may notice is a bit sporadic and unpredictable during this time. Temporary acne or oiliness as our androgen levels begin to rebalance. We'll have potentially mood fluctuations, fatigue. Some people also experience mild hair shedding. So these changes reflect a body in communication again. The endocrine system is shifting from external hormonal output to its own internal rhythm. While ovulation can return quickly for some, for others, they may not ovulate right away, especially if nutrient reserves are low or the nervous system is under strain or there are underlying imbalances that were masked by the pill, and also depends on how long they were on hormonal contraceptive. Like I shared in the first part of the series, if you were placed on hormonal contraceptives before your body stopped, was fully through its initial development, then it may take your body longer to learn certain signals because, well, your system was stopped in its development by being put on hormonal contraceptives. So it may take longer for some of these systems to establish themselves because they never learned how to in the first place. So this is where the work in part 3 of the series, which again, I invite you to listen to that podcast or go on over to Substack to check out part 3, where I talk about stabilizing blood sugar and replenishing nutrients and regulating stress. These become a very important bridge between stopping and your hormonal contraceptives and thriving afterwards. So, moving on to the cycle rebuilding phase, which are months 3 to 6. Once ovulation resumes, your cycle begins to take shape. But perfect, quote unquote, right, is not going to be the goal here. Pattern recognition is. You may notice you have longer or shorter cycle lengths from month to month. There may be variation in ovulation timing. Day 14 one month, right? Or they may ovulate on day 20 the next month. Spotting before your cycle, or heavier or lighter periods than you had before. These are signs that your body is learning its rhythm again. It's not evidence that there is something wrong. It's essential, and please hear me out. It's absolutely essential to give yourself grace and expect that variability during this phase. For those who like to know what's happening on the physiological level, I'll give a brief overview. You have in your follicular phase, right? So that's the first stage of your cycle from menstruation until ovulation, your follicular phase. And this is often longer in early post-pill cycles because the brain and the ovaries are strengthening their communication loop. And over time, the signal begins to normalize, right? So this first phase of your cycle can be, right, a little bit longer than what you might have been accustomed to before you got on the pill. And again, this depends on when you actually got on hormonal contraceptives, because if you were on them from a younger age, then we have a lot more that your body has to learn how to do. So then you have your luteinizing hormone and your follicle stimulating hormone. LH and FSH are learning to find their rhythm as well. And progesterone, which is going to rise after ovulation, because you have the corpus luteum is left behind, the egg is released, corpus luteum is left behind, is producing an abundance of progesterone. That might also be something that I don't really address or talk about in the Substack article, but I'll talk about here on the podcast, is that progesterone receptivity can be a bit different depending on how long you are on hormonal birth control. I speak about this much more on my blog article on my website, what every woman should know about coming off the pill or about the pill. So head on over to my website, check out that article. Progesterone resistance is something I talk about more there. But ideally, right, during this 3 to 6 months, when you're navigating the cycle rebuilding phase, then your luteal phase is starting to become more stable. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Cycle tracking during this time can be incredibly empowering. You'll begin to see what your unique patterns are, how stress and nutrition and rest all influence your ovulation and your flow. Evidence shows that most people begin to menstruate within the first 3 to 6 months after stopping hormonal contraceptives. Though hormonal stabilization and especially progesterone levels, kind of what I was alluding to before when I was talking about potentials around progesterone resistance and what have you, those may take a bit longer depending on how long you are on contraception and your overall metabolic health. So think of your early post-pill cycles in charts like this. You have cycle 1. No clear ovulation patterns may be happening or your temps may be all over the place. Cycle 3. Emerging ovulation signs, but the luteal phase is still finding its footing. And then cycle 6, you may start to then see a more defined biphasic, meaning 2 phases, right? Oftentimes seen in the basal body temperature, lower temps in the first phase, higher temps in the second phase. Clear biphasic pattern begins to show up. Your luteal temperatures are starting to hold more steady. So this is a normal progression, right? It's your body remembering. And it's something that I invite you to give yourself grace and time. So big question, when should I seek support, right? If I'm navigating this transition, when do I know that there's something where I need a bit more robust or targeted support? There's a wide range of normals, as I've alluded to before in this podcast, but certain signs do suggest that additional support or testing may be important for you to pursue. So if you've been 90 days post-pill and you've had no bleed or ovulation, this is why tracking your cycle can be a really powerful tool, because you can start to know whether or not you are seeing the signs of ovulation occur. If it's been more than 90 days post-pill, I would invite you to seek some support. If you're experiencing persistent acne or hair loss, especially beyond 6 months, then I would definitely say seek some support. Significant PMS symptoms, mood changes, ongoing fatigue that are interfering with your daily life, extremely heavy or painful periods, or cycles that are consistently shorter than 21 days or longer than 45 days. All of these things that I just listed are things that may indicate that your HPO, again, remember your hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, needs some more regulation, or that there may be some underlying imbalances like thyroid disorder or PCOS or insulin resistance that has been masked by the pill. And now that you're not on the pill, it's unmasking, right? Because the pill can oftentimes mask these conditions. And then when you stop, they become visible again. So if you're looking for some support, you'll have people like myself, which are integrative and functional nutritional therapists, as well as I'm a FAE, fertility awareness practitioner. So someone like myself can support you in assessing your hormone levels, your nutrient status, your metabolic function, and support you in navigating the next steps of whatever the next steps of your journey is. So if you'd like to book a consultation with me, you can head on over to my website, connectioncaretherapy.com, or you can head on over to Substack. Be sure to subscribe. And also, if you can see there, all of the links that I mentioned in this podcast are in my Substack. So a gentle reminder, messy charts do not mean that you are broken. And I'm going to unpack a client case here. So if you're listening to this podcast, you head on over to my Substack and you can actually see the images that are in the, that I'm speaking about here. I actually put some chart images into my Substack article with my client's permission. Of course, everything de-identified, but you can actually see the charts. So one of the most common concerns I hear from clients post-pill is that my chart looks so messy? Am I doing something wrong? And the answer is no. The charts are a mirror of what's actually happening internally. Irregularities can be reframed as as reflecting your body's recalibration journey, right? Not your body malfunctioning, but your body recalibrating. So as I shared, right, that I've worked with someone recently who felt as though her cycles were all over the place. But when we actually looked at her charts and discussed them in terms of post-pill recalibration, she began to actually see this progression. So what I have here in this image in my Substack is that I show my client's second chart. And if you look at the chart, you can see multiple patches of cervical fluid showing that her body is trying to gear up for ovulation, but isn't quite making it there, right? Then the next chart that I show is my client's chart on her fifth cycle of charting. And we can see that ovulation happens, but the luteal phase is short. It's only around 8 days, right? And then we have cycle 7, 8, right? The patterns have become much clearer. The temps, and I actually have her cycle 8 chart in the Substack article, so you can go there and actually see a visual of this. But the patterns have become much clearer. We see the clear biphasikness, this temp shift is obvious and sustained. Her luteal phase is in the healthier range between 11 and 12 days, which is telling us how her progesterone is functioning. And so what we were able to see is that her cycles were not all over the place, right? Is that she's in this rebuilding phase, right? And that her body is responding in a way that makes sense. So early post-pill charts may show multiple patches of cervical fluid before ovulation as estrogen is surging and then dropping, right? Ovulation isn't quite getting there. It's surging and then dropping, right? Temperature shifts can be more subtle or delayed in luteal phases. It's not uncommon in early post-pill charts for them to be fewer than 10 days. All of these were expected. They made perfect sense. And with consistent support, they tend to regulate over time. So learning to read your body's signals rather than panicking over them is one of the most empowering aspects of this journey. It can really transform your cycle from something that you need to monitor to something that you understand. So in the big picture, by month 6 post-pill, most people are seeing clear ovulation patterns, more predictable cycles, and their symptoms are improving. However, for others, especially those with deeper nutrition depletion or who are under chronic stress, who had irregular cycles prior to being on the pill, that timeline may take longer. And know that that's still normal, right? It makes sense that your body's physiology doesn't just bounce back. And it's important to frame that what isn't actually important is how quickly your body bounces back, but how supported you are during the process, right? To know that you're syncing up with yourself again. It's not you're falling behind. It's not that something's wrong, but your body is taking the time it needs to sync up again, right, with itself. So one of the resources that I have in my free resource library on my website, you can head on over to connectioncaretherapy.com and grab a resource called Coming Off the Pill. I also have some really great resources around gut health that are part of that free resource library. It's a really great just overview and introduction to some of these conversations if that is something that you or someone that you know is navigating. So head on over to my website or to my Substack and you can click the links and grab your free resources. Also, if you're looking for high quality hormone health and fertility supplement support, I invite you to visit my full script store. I have a full supplement dispensary on my website, including my post-pill replenishment bundle for those who are coming off the pill. If you're looking for concise, vetted tested recommendations to support you in navigating on this journey, then head on over to my website or my Substack, and you can find the links there. As I mentioned before, I offer one-on-one consultations and sessions. You can also tap into my Cycle Connection course. And then I've mentioned in this podcast and others, my article called What Every Woman Needs to Know About the Pill. It's a good one, right? It's a good one. If it's something that you're navigating or someone else is navigating, please do check that out. I think it provides another lens on some of these conversations that we have or have been having throughout this series. And I also spend a little bit more time talking about progesterone resistance. Those of us who are placed on hormonal contraceptives at a young age, right? Like myself. And there's some other resources in there, a TED Talk from a renowned doctor who does this kind of research on the pill and our brains and all kinds of stuff there. So head on over to my Substack or to my website to check out the links. And then in looking ahead, in part 5 of this series, we're going to unpack one of the most confusing questions that I hear from clients. How do I know if my symptoms are just from post-pill or if I actually have PCOS? So what distinguishes post-pill PCOS from classic PCOS? I'll share with you when testing is worthwhile, how to understand what your body is communicating through symptoms and charts. If you're not already subscribed to my Substack, go on over to Substack and do so that you can get part 5 delivered right into your inbox. And then, just as we close up today, I'd love to hear what your post-pill timeline experience has looked like. If you have any questions that you also want to drop, head on over to my Substack and do so. I'd love to hear from you. And that is all that we have for today. I look forward to continuing our connection, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye for now, and stay connected.
That does it for this episode of the Connection Care Community Podcast with Majida. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you're leaving with a fresh perspective on your body and overall well-being, along with practical tools you can integrate into daily life. The support doesn't stop here. Be sure to connect with us online at connectioncaretherapy.com for more resources to guide you on your journey. You can also find us on Substack and connect with Majida on Instagram at Majida Sai'da. Remember to rate, review, and share this podcast. And most importantly, stay connected.